Okay, today's lesson is Cartesian vector. I hat. What is the I hat? The I hat is a vector in x, the unit vector in x direction is 1, 0. What does the 1, 0 means? Means if this is x and here is the y-axis, so it means you just go 1 unit to the right, and it's gonna be I hat, or the vector unit vector I in x direction. And what is the j hat? Is the unit vector in y direction. Is 0, 1. Means just you go 1 unit up in y direction. Now, look at this. Vector u is 2i plus 3j, means this is simply 2 in x direction and 3 units going up in y direction. If you want to illustrate it on a Cartesian, you go 2 unit to the right, 3 unit up, so it would be your vector. Call it vector u. You can move your vector around, like this one is again u, since they have the same direction and the same length magnitude, they are the same vector, so you can move your vector anywhere you want. And this one is going to be 5i minus 2j, means you go 5 unit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unit to the right and 2 unit down, so that would be your vector. So magnitude of the vector. Your vector again have an x and y direction. So the magnitude of that, I show it by absolute value. Absolute value around the vector means the magnitude of the vector. It's going to be x component power 2 plus power 2 plus the y component power 2. And the reason, if this is your vector, of course it has an x component and a y component. According to the Pythagorean theorem, the magnitude of the vector, if this is vector s, the magnitude of the vector s is going to be the x component power 2 plus the y component power 2, Pythagorean theorem. So adding the vectors, let's say I have a vector u. The vector u has the x component u1 and the y component u2. And vector v, it has x component v1 and the y component v2. I want to add these two vectors. U plus vector v is equal to u1 u2 plus v1 v2. We add the x components, v1 u1 plus v1, u2 plus v2. So adding two vectors, if you have x and y component of the vectors, you just simply add the x components and add the y components. So multiplying a vector by a scalar, let's say I have k, I want to multiply it by vector u. So multiply k, the u has x and y component. So simply k multiplied by the x component and k multiplied by the y component. So k could be negative or positive. So subtracting a Cartesian vector. Again, I want to, let's say, subtract vector u minus vector v. So it's u1, u2, x and y component of the u minus v1, v2. So to subtract these two vectors, of course, you subtract the x component and you subtract the y components from each other. Okay, so the next page. Now we want to do Cartesian vector between 2 points. So I have point 1 and point 2. If I want to illustrate that, so this is my point 1 and here is my point 2. So from point 1 to point 2, I draw a vector. So how do I do that? So when we're talking about the vector, so it's P1, P2 is my vector. I put a vector sign about that. Is kind of going to be P2 minus P1. Make sure this is P2. So P2 has what? X2, Y2, X and Y component minus P1 has X component and the Y component. So and everyone know how to do that. So it's going to be X2 minus X1 and Y2 minus Y1. So make sure the tip of that minus the beginning. So or second point minus the first point. If you want to find the magnitude of the P1, P2, what do? You put absolute value around that. So the X component is X2 minus X1 power 2 plus the Y component, which is Y2 minus Y1 power 2. Simply, that would be the magnitude of your vector. So this is an example. You have a vector A and vector B. What is the horizontal and vertical component? So for A, which is 5 and -7, so it would be 5 and 0. This is the X component.